What's going on, you guys? It's your boy Patrick, aka Addicted to Combat, back for another week of Best Bets and Props, where I go over all of my betting action for this weekend's UFC card, which is UFC Vegas 74. We've got Kai Kara France taking on Amir Albazi at Flyweight in the main event, potentially 5 rounds of action. And right now, we still have 13 fights on this card, which is a miracle because we've had a lot of short notice drop-offs, some debuting guys filling in on short notice. Jamie Malarkey's got a new opponent. I covered that fight on my live stream last night with Lou Betya, which was a wild ride as well if you want to check that out. And also check out my full card breakdown for all details. But we also have a new opponent for Jim Miller. Jared Gordon is now out. We've got Jesse Butler from Fury FC making his debut on just like 3 days' notice. So lines have dropped for that. I do have a bet on that fight, and I will break it down briefly in this video. I had a chance to tape Jesse Butler, who I was not familiar with. But hit the like, hit the subscribe. Let's break into the bets for this card, which I got to tell you guys, I'm not too inspired this week as far as the bets are concerned. I like the fight card, but it's one of those weeks for me where it's like I feel like everything I add, I'm just forcing action. I've got 4 money lines at this point and 2 small props, and anything beyond that, like I was just looking at sides I liked, some live underdogs, some violence props, but it kind of felt like I had writer's block this week. Nothing was really inspiring me to bet a lot of action on this card. So I've got about like 5 or 6 units on this card invested. I normally go, between like 10 and 13 on a normal week. And I'm on a 2-fight card winning streak. Let's make it 3 if we can stay safe and dodge some landmines. But I will talk about some violent spots and some props I'm not betting, but I do like at the end. So the first money line I have is actually at Bantamweight, and this is a debuting fighter, Muin Gafurov, to defeat John Castaneda. This is an underdog spot, plus 120 odds I got on Muin Gafurov. Just 1 unit invested on this guy, who's a very potent finisher. All but one of this guy's victories as a pro, 17 out of 18 are by finish. Knockouts and submissions. He's a Tajikistan fighter, very powerful striker, kind of a wild one-at-a-time power shot type of striker, but it's effective, and he knocks people out cold. But he's a very proficient wrestler as well, so if he wants to just charge the issue on John Castaneda, keep him on his back foot, and start threatening takedowns, he could do that, and that could help open up those big, overhand rights, those big 2-3 combinations he knocks people out with. Or, he could just bully him to the ground if he gets into trouble. So I like the well-rounded game plan from Gafurov, and I also like the fact that he's been tested at the high level before. He's been in UAE Warriors. He's been in the LFA, most recently 2 finishes there. And he's also fought former UFC fighter, a legend power puncher at the weight class, John Lineker, and actually was competitive against that guy, ultimately lost by a decision, but he showed his toughness, eating several of John Lineker's strikes, which is not easy to do. So give me Muin Gafurov in this one, taking the stab on this debuting fighter, but I think he's certainly UFC caliber. So 1 unit at plus 120 on Gafurov. The next money line I have is Tim Elliott. 2 units on Tim Elliott to defeat Victor Altamirano, and this is at minus 150. It was the first bet that I placed on this card about a week or a week and a half ago during the off week. I think he's around like minus 170 to minus 180 is Tim Elliott. He's going to be a very diverse striker. He throws a lot of fakes, feints, gets in your face, and is super aggressive. His wrestling is probably his best quality in this fight, but his striking is super powerful and just comes from weird angles. He'll bait you in to counter you with the hands low. So he's winging, haymakers at times from his hips, but he's not like a new guy to the division doing this. This guy's been around for almost 10 years between his 2 stints in the UFC, even challenged Demetrius Johnson for the title and had him in all sorts of trouble with his submissions early in the fight, even landed on Demetrius Johnson's chin. He's very good at winning round 1s because he's so crazy and just like unpredictable to fight against, and he kind of freaks people out in round 1, lets them they lose that round against him, they reassess, and maybe they can take over in rounds 2 or rounds 3. But I think Tim Elliott gets a round 2 submission here. Victor Altamirano being very tough. He's got that Mexican durability. We saw him dropped against Daniel Da Silva and pop right back up and put out Da Silva himself. I like Tim Elliott here to probably get a club and sub. He loves the front chokes. He's very much submission over position. And I see by round 2, he's going to get this job done against a very kind of similar fighter as far as the way that Victor Altamirano throws a lot of fakes, feints, spinning attacks. But I just think Tim Elliott's on a different level. The risk here is he's 36 years old at flyweight, and he's very grizzled, but I think he's a man on a mission with a lot of these personal issues he's dealing with outside of the cage. So I've got Tim Elliott 2 units at minus 150 on the money line, Tim Elliott a quarter unit by submission at plus 500, and 0.2 units on Tim Elliott's round 2 submission at plus 1800. So those are the 2 props I have on this card, and that's the second money line. The third money line, I guess I'll just break into it now. It's the Jim Miller fight against his new opponent. I'm betting on Jim Miller. I was on Jared Gordon before. I liked him just being the younger man who could win minutes even past the 1.5 round mark. Which is, that's really been a thing that is a mark against Jim Miller in the later part of the last 6 years of his career. He hasn't won a decision or even won a fight that's gone over 1.5 rounds. But in this fight, I just really think his experience, his durability, his striking power, his jiu-jitsu and wrestling is so far above this newcomer on 3 days' notice, Jesse Butler, who's, I'm not sure what rank of black belt, I'm not sure what rank of BJJ he is. Might be a black belt. He's got 8 submissions out of his 12 wins. He's got a 12-4 record and a long amateur record as well, does Jesse Butler, who's a featherweight fighter. That's another big red flag here is it's just one of those spots where he got the late notice call to be in the UFC. He's been doing well. He's on a 5-fight winning streak, last competing in Fury FC. And the guy's 31 years old, so now it's the time at these later weight classes to get your entrance to the UFC. If you're going to sacrifice yourself against a legend in Jim Miller, roll the dice on that up a weight class, but he's going to go back to featherweight. He's fighting a little bit out of his league here, but he is 5'10", a long rangy guy. He does like to throw long strikes, like a nice long 1-2. He'll hit the 1-1-2, then throw a head kick. Pretty snappy with that, but overall, I'm not too impressed with his power or his speed with his hands. He is super hittable in return, drops his hands when he throws kicks, and his grappling is good offensively. He can fish for subs, but against these low-level guys he's facing, he's oftentimes just trying to get the reversal off of his back. He can get taken down very easily, and he'll be trying to isolate a limb and threaten with arm bars. And against this level of competition on the regionals, he sometimes lands those, but I think his best win, the only guy that I knew that he had fought was Masio Fullen, who was in the UFC 6 years ago. I think he went 1-2 or 1-3 in the UFC. He was a Mexican fighter on the Latin American season of The Ultimate Fighter, but that guy was so far past his prime. He was in the UFC and released 6-7 years ago, and now he got knocked out a couple fights ago against Jesse Butler, and it was a really nice 2-3 counter. It was that left hook that dropped Masio Fullen. So if he can get the power going early, he can be dangerous with the hands, but Jim Miller is so notoriously durable. I just don't see it happening. So I see Jim Miller probably getting this done once again, under 1.5 rounds. I'd say probably a knockout. One of those big southpaw left hands, I think, is going to hit Jesse Butler square in the chin. Maybe that's it, or maybe Jim Miller does have to drop down and submit him. But either way, I'm taking Jim Miller on the money line. It's on BetOnline already, even though this fight has just been announced a few hours ago. Minus 200, so I put 2 units to win 1 on the 39-year-old aged veteran Jim Miller, who's trying to get to UFC 300. So this bout certainly helps him in that quest. And that's the third money line. The fourth money line I have is in the main event. I have Kai Kara France to defeat Amir Albazi. This is a complete 50-50 fight for the most part as far as the odds are concerned. Minus 110 is the price I paid. 2 units on Kai Kara France. And this guy is a proven commodity in the UFC, whereas Amir Albazi, he's 4-0, but it's against not the best level of competition so far. He's handling some of these guys appropriately, and Amir Albazi is definitely a force to be reckoned with as he moves through the division. He's got more of an explosive quality about him, right? His striking is very explosive, very powerful knees, good short hooks up close, and in the clinch he could do some decent work, but when he gets the fight to the mat, he's super explosive as well. Short-range takedowns, jumps on submissions pretty effectively, and he's got a tight squeeze. Neither of these two men have actually been into the championship rounds of a fight that this is scheduled for, but Kai Kara France is at least prepared for that against championship level guys like Brandon Moreno a couple of times, knocked out Cody Garbrandt, former champion, and he also had a very impressive performance in terms of this fight against Askar Askarov about a year ago, where he as a sizable underdog, stuffed all the takedowns and managed to just land the better strikes. So I like the flashes of power from Kai Kara-France. His striking accuracy, striking selection is pretty diverse. And if he can stay on his feet, I think he'll have the better output as this goes. So give me Kai Kara-France. I'm just going to go with what I know. And what I know is that Kai Kara-France is making very few mistakes against high-level guys. So that's the fourth money line. And that is all of my betting action, including those two props on Tim Elliott's submission and sub 2. As far as like the time props and some violent spots that I almost considered betting, but just can't get there myself. Alex Caceres taking on Daniel Pineda in the co-main event at featherweight. I like the fight doesn't go to decision at minus 170, and I do lean towards the Pineda side as the underdog. I think he's going to be the bully in that fight, and I like him inside the distance, but the fight ending in submission is plus 190, and both of these guys love taking the backs of their opponents, getting the tight squeeze, and the guillotine is how Daniel Pineda just won his last fight over Tucker Lutz. And I could see him bullying Alex Caceres, taking him down and maybe beating him up on the mat and exposing that neck. But either way, I think 5 out of, the 40-plus fights of Daniel Pineda have actually gone to decision. So very few of his fights are getting there. And I see if somebody's going to finish this fight, I think it is Pineda. But, fight doesn't go minus 170. Fight ends in sub plus 190. Those are two spots I like there for violence. And the second fight I like for violence is earlier on the prelims. Daniel Willie Cat Santos taking on Johnny Munoz Jr. This is a money line I would definitely bet. I like Daniel Santos in this fight. He's super aggressive, one of these Brazilian shoot-to-box, very powerful kickboxers, and his aggression does leave him open to being countered and hit, but he's pretty durable, as we saw in his last fight, beating John Castaneda in round 2. And Johnny Munoz Jr., basic striking, more of a grappler, wants to get the fight to the mat, but look, either one of these guys could end this fight inside the distance, and I think with that constant pressure moving forward from Santos, he's either going to end the fight by knockout himself, is more where I'm leaning on this, or he ends up getting caught himself on the feet or getting taken down and subbed out if he tires later in the fight. But I like Santos. It's just he's at minus 210 at this point, where I had a bet on him before the fight was postponed last time 4 weeks ago at minus 155. So I'm not going to be bothered to pay such an increased price of chalk on this one. I'm just going to leave it alone, but I do like him to win the fight. His knockout prop is plus 130. This kind of moved accordingly to his money line moving up in price as well. So just going to pass on this one, but the under 2.5, minus 170. I like that spot for this fight at Bantamweight. So those are all of the violent spots I like. That's all of my betting action, those 4 money lines. Muin Gafurov, Tim Elliott, Jim Miller, and Kai Kara-France, along with Tim Elliott sub and sub 2. So let me know in the comments what you guys are betting on. I see some people online like this week of fights for betting action. I just have like that writer's block this week. Nothing was really exciting to bet on for me, so I'm going to keep it light, try to extend this winning event streak to 3, make some profit, and move on to next week's event, which is a pay-per-view, UFC 289. And there's some spots on there I like already, so can't wait to talk about those next week. Good luck in all of your betting action. Again, hit the like, hit the subscribe, and check out the link below for my affiliate link to betonline.ag. If you guys need a new sports book to bet on, I love their lines for mixed martial arts. And as you see with the Jim Miller-Jesse Butler fight, announced just hours ago, they already got lines out, and you're able to bet a decent amount of money on those. So, again, hit the like, hit the subscribe. Let's keep the channel growing. Love you guys, and leave a comment below and show me how you guys plan to make money this weekend. Cheers.